John Swinney there, the Scottish Finance Secretary, and just underlining his take on what's been going on today. Just to recap, the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, giving his views on what some of the options would mean if Scotland voted for independence. Robert Peston listening to that with me, our business editor. The Mark Carney point about political union and currency union. Just help us a little with that, and what is the rationale behind that, and what difficulties might that present to Mr Swinney and his colleagues?
Well, I do think, I wrote this in my blog today, that Mark Carney has lobbed a rather enormous stink bomb into the middle of Edinburgh. I think this is quite difficult for those who favour independence. And I'll give you an example of why you do almost certainly have to have political union of some sort to make a monetary union work effectively. And take the example where Scotland gets its way and ends up owning all of North Sea oil. Now, in those circumstances, if the oil price were to fall in Scotland, that could have quite big negative economic consequences. You know, in a worst case, it could tip Scotland into recession. However, in the rest of the UK, so England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, a fall in the oil price would be good because households, businesses would be paying less for energy. Now, in those circumstances, because the biggest part of the UK is England, Wales, Northern Ireland, in those circumstances, the pound would reflect conditions in the healthier part of the entire islands, and it wouldn't fall to the level that would help Scotland through these recessionary conditions. Similarly, the Bank of England, in setting interest rates, would have to set interest rates for them that were best for the majority, and the majority would be those in England, Wales, Northern Ireland. So this is a long way around of saying that in a currency union, all other things being equal, the recession would be made worse by, the recession in Scotland would be made worse by the fact that neither the currency would adjust in the way that would suit Scotland, nor the interest rate adjust in the way that would suit Scotland. So what happens? You get a deeper recession, and what else happens is that tax revenues for the Scottish Government fall more sharply. Expenditure on things like unemployment benefit and social security would rise more. Big deficit in Scotland. Financial difficulties for the Scottish Government. Arguably unaffordable costs for the Scottish Government. Now, in a successful monetary union, there's a pool of money provided by all the members to bail out a member like Scotland in those circumstances. That money, where would it come from? It would come from the taxpayers of England, Wales, Northern Ireland. Now, they would only provide that money on the basis that there are strict controls in both good times and bad times on how much Scots can spend, how much the Scottish Government can spend, how much they can tax, how much they can borrow, and all the rest of it. And so, in order to have a monetary union where the members are protected from those sorts of shocks, you have to have a common fund, and if you're going to have a common fund, there have to be very significant restrictions on the ability of the Scottish Government, in this case, to do what it likes. And that is what people mean when they say political union is essential. And you can see, in recent history, why that is so important, because there aren't those sorts of arrangements in the Eurozone, and we've had the most terrible, dire crisis in Ireland, in Portugal, in Spain, in Greece, in Cyprus, and that's precisely because they don't have that kind of political union.
The euro option, you kind of covered there, because there are other options, obviously, apart from a currency union. There's a B option, which Alex Hammond is not proposing, but which other people are talking, which is an independent Scottish currency. Does that get around some of the problems you just mentioned? It gets around this problem, you know, and it may well be that as we get nearer to the referendum, it may well be that that's where the Scottish nationalists end up. And the reason for that is because the Treasury very forcefully said today that they agree with Mark Carney, and therefore they do not believe that it would be possible to negotiate an acceptable monetary union with Scotland. So they're basically saying, you know, Carney has blown it up.
So it may well be that the Scots will have to, or the Scot Nats, excuse me, will have to go for the option of an independent currency. Now, that is also not without costs, because any new currency, not known by, not used, not traded, not known by investors, there is an issue immediately about whether or not investors will trust it in the short run. The cost of borrowing, therefore, for the Scottish Government, and therefore for Scottish people, might be disproportionately higher as it proves itself a prudently run government over a few years. So the transition costs, as you adopt a new currency, could be really quite high. And there are other issues which are really quite scary, which are to do with the fact that you've got these huge Scottish banks. They would have enormous liabilities fixed in hard sterling and hard euros, and all of a sudden they'd be borrowing in soft new Scottish pounds. Actually, that could cause them very severe financial difficulties. So, you know, there is no, on this whole currency issue, I'm afraid there is no easy option.
OK. Robert, thanks very much again. Robert Peston, our business editor.